In the annals of human darkness, few stories chill the soul quite like that of the Bean clan, a family that turned cannibalism into a way of life and terror into an art form. For 25 years, they haunted the rugged coastline of southwestern Scotland, transforming travelers' journeys into nightmares and entire communities into ghost towns. This is not a tale of monsters born from folklore, but a documented horror that unfolded in the shadows of civilization itself. The year was 1400, and Scotland was a land caught between worlds. Medieval traditions clashing with emerging Renaissance ideals, while political instability created perfect conditions for chaos to flourish. In this backdrop of uncertainty, Alexander Sawney Bean emerged not as a product of his time, but as something far more sinister. Born into poverty in East Lothian, Bean showed early signs of the violence that would later consume not just him, but generations of his bloodline. Historical records, though fragmented, paint Bean as a man who rejected society's constraints from an early age. Unlike other criminals who operated within existing frameworks of lawlessness, Bean chose to create his own twisted civilization. When he met Agnes Douglas, a woman whose reputation preceded her in whispers of witchcraft and murder, their union became less a marriage than a pact with darkness itself. The couple's decision to flee civilization wasn't born of romantic idealism, but of calculated malice. They sought a place where their appetites could flourish unchecked, where the normal rules of humanity could be discarded like unwanted clothing. The coastal caves of Galloway provided exactly what they needed, a hidden fortress where screams would echo only off stone walls, and where the tide would wash away evidence of their crimes twice daily. Bean's Cave, located near Ballantrae on the Ayrshire coast, stretched nearly a mile into the Earth's bowels. This wasn't merely a shelter, it was a carefully chosen strategic position. The entrance remained hidden during high tide, making discovery by casual travelers virtually impossible. Inside, the cave system branched into multiple chambers, creating a subterranean labyrinth that would house horrors beyond imagination. The clan's first victims were likely solitary travelers, merchants, pilgrims, and messengers whose disappearances could be easily explained by the dangerous nature of medieval travel. But Bean and Agnes didn't simply rob and kill. They consumed their victims entirely, wasting nothing. What began as desperate hunger evolved into ritualistic cannibalism, with human flesh becoming not just sustenance, but sacred nourishment for their growing family. As Agnes bore child after child in the cave's darkness, each new generation was raised in complete isolation from human society. These children knew no law but their parents' twisted commands, no morality beyond the clan's perverted survival needs. They learned to walk in perpetual darkness, to hunt human prey, and to view the consumption of human flesh as natural as breathing. The children of Sawney and Agnes never saw sunlight, never heard normal human speech, and never learned that the world beyond their cave operated under different rules. Their education consisted of lessons in ambush tactics, methods of preserving human meat, and the sacred importance of family loyalty above all else. Love, as understood by civilized society, was replaced by a fierce tribalism that brooked no dissent or weakness. Incest became inevitable in this isolated environment, not by choice, but by design. Bean understood that maintaining genetic isolation would prevent outside influence from corrupting his perfect family unit. Sons mated with sisters, mothers with sons, creating a genealogical nightmare that produced increasingly unstable offspring. Each new generation grew more feral, more removed from human empathy, more perfectly adapted to their underground hell. The clan's hunting methods evolved with terrifying efficiency. They learned to predict travel routes, to identify vulnerable targets, and to strike with coordinated precision that left no survivors to tell tales. Their victims were dragged back to the cave while still alive, ensuring maximum freshness for the feast that would follow. The lucky ones died quickly. Others faced prolonged torment as the clan practiced techniques passed down through generations. Food preservation became a sacred art within the clan. Human flesh was smoked, salted, and stored in chambers specifically designated for this purpose. The cave walls were lined with hooks from which dismembered body parts hung like grotesque decorations. Arms, legs, and torsos were treated with the same care a normal family might lavish on livestock, because to the beings, that's exactly what their victims represented. The psychological transformation of Bean's descendants represented perhaps the most disturbing aspect of their story. Children born in absolute darkness developed heightened senses but diminished humanity. They could track prey by scent alone, move through their cave system in total silence, and communicate through subtle sounds that mimicked natural cave acoustics. They became something between human and animal, retaining intelligence while abandoning conscience. As the clan grew to over 40 members, their hunting territory expanded dramatically. No longer content with occasional travelers, they began targeting entire merchant caravans and even small communities. Their success bred confidence, and confidence bred carelessness. The calculated secrecy that had protected them for decades slowly eroded as their appetite for human flesh grew insatiable. Local communities began noticing patterns in the disappearances. Trade routes that had operated safely for generations suddenly became death traps. Entire families vanished without trace, leaving behind only abandoned belongings and sometimes scattered bones. The whispers began quietly, but gradually grew into a chorus of terror that reached the ears of local authorities. The Beans' methodical approach to their crimes created a reign of terror that extended far beyond their immediate hunting grounds. Rumors spread faster than truth, transforming normal travel into an exercise in mortal fear. Merchants hired additional guards, pilgrims traveled in larger groups, and many routes were abandoned entirely. The economic impact of their predation began affecting entire regions of Scotland. Local magistrates initially dismissed reports of the disappearances as exaggeration or natural hazards of medieval travel. Bandits were common, wolves still roamed the Scottish Highlands, and deadly accidents befell travelers regularly. The idea that an organized group was systematically hunting humans for food seemed too fantastic to merit serious investigation. This skepticism allowed the clan to operate with virtual impunity for years. Religious leaders attempted to explain the disappearances through spiritual frameworks, suggesting that Satan himself had taken residence in the Scottish countryside. Some proclaimed the missing persons had been claimed by divine judgment for unknown sins, while others organized prayer vigils and pilgrimages intended to cleanse the land of evil influences. None suspected that the evil was entirely human in origin. The turning point came when the clan made their most ambitious raid yet, attacking a wedding party returning from Maybole. This wasn't a crime of opportunity, but a calculated assault on nearly 30 people, including women and children from prominent local families. The sheer audacity of the attack, combined with the social status of the victims, finally forced authorities to acknowledge that something far worse than common banditry was terrorizing the region. Survivors of the wedding party attack provided the first concrete evidence of the clan's existence. They described attackers who moved with inhuman coordination, who showed no response to pleas or offers of ransom, and who seemed more interested in capturing living victims than stealing valuables. These testimonies painted a picture of predators who hunted humans the way wolves hunted deer, with patient planning and ruthless efficiency. King James I of Scotland, already struggling with various rebellions and political challenges, initially viewed the reports as local problems requiring local solutions. However, when the disappearances began affecting trade routes crucial to the royal treasury, the situation demanded royal attention. The king understood that allowing such terror to continue unchecked would undermine confidence in royal authority throughout Scotland. The royal investigation revealed the true scope of the clan's crimes through meticulous documentation of disappearances over the previous 25 years. Court scribes compiled lists of missing persons that read like a catalogue of human devastation. Merchants, farmers, craftsmen, clergy, and nobility alike had vanished into the Scottish countryside. The numbers were staggering. Over 1,000 people had disappeared without explanation. Military planners studying the disappearances noticed geographic patterns that pointed toward the Galloway coast. The concentration of vanishings around specific areas, combined with survivor testimonies about the attackers' retreat routes, gradually narrowed the search area. Professional trackers, many of them veterans of border conflicts with England, were enlisted to conduct systematic searches of coastal caves and hidden valleys. The discovery of the clan's lair came almost by accident, when a royal hunting party pursuing deer along the coast noticed an unusual tidal pattern near what appeared to be solid rock. Closer investigation revealed the cave entrance, cleverly concealed but not perfectly hidden from determined searchers. The hunters initially planned to mark the location and return with proper forces, but the sound of voices echoing from within the cave convinced them to investigate immediately. What the royal hunters found defied human comprehension. The cave entrance opened into a charnel house that would have challenged Dante's imagination. Human bones littered the floor like discarded refuse, while dismembered body parts hung from crude hooks driven into the cave walls. The smell, a nauseating mixture of decay, smoke, and human waste, forced several seasoned warriors to flee back into the clean ocean air. The hunters' torches illuminated chambers filled with carefully organized human remains, sorted by body part and preservation method. Arms were stored separately from legs, torsos hung in different areas depending on their stage of preparation, and heads were arranged like trophies along specially carved ledges. The clan had transformed their cave into an efficient processing facility for human consumption, complete with smoking areas, salt preservation chambers, and waste disposal systems. The royal party's initial shock gave way to grim determination as they explored deeper into the cave system. They found living quarters carved from natural rock formations, sleeping areas covered with human skins instead of animal pelts, and primitive furniture constructed from human bones. This wasn't simply a hiding place for criminals, it was a fully functional underground civilization built entirely around the consumption of human flesh. The clan themselves, when finally cornered in the deepest recesses of their cave, presented a sight that would haunt the royal soldiers for the rest of their lives. 48 individuals, men, women, and children, emerged from the darkness like creatures from another world. Their skin was pale as death from never seeing sunlight. Their eyes reflected torchlight like animal eyes, and their movements possessed an eerie coordination that suggested they communicated through means beyond normal human speech. The youngest clan members, those born in the cave's absolute darkness, displayed characteristics that bordered on the inhuman. They moved with the fluid grace of predators, showed no fear of the armed soldiers, and seemed genuinely puzzled by the intruders' obvious distress at the cave's contents. These children had never learned that human flesh was taboo. To them, the hanging body parts represented normal food storage, and the soldiers' horror was incomprehensible. Agnes Bean, now ancient but still commanding respect from her offspring, stepped forward as the clan's spokesperson. Her words, delivered in a dialect corrupted by decades of isolation, revealed the depth of their psychological transformation. She expressed no remorse for their crimes, showed no understanding of why the soldiers appeared distressed, and seemed genuinely confused by suggestions that their lifestyle was wrong or unnatural. The clan's capture presented Scottish authorities with an unprecedented legal challenge. Traditional trial procedures assumed defendants who understood basic concepts of right and wrong, who recognized the authority of royal courts, and who could comprehend the charges against them. The Bean clan members displayed no such understanding. They viewed their captors not as representatives of justice, but as potential meals interrupted in their natural hunting activities. King James I, upon receiving reports from the scene, made a decision that would be debated by legal scholars for centuries. He declared that no trial was necessary for creatures who had placed themselves so far outside human society that normal legal protections no longer applied. The clan would be executed immediately, without formal charges, without legal representation, and without the possibility of appeal. The execution orders specified that the punishments should match the crimes in their horror. The men of the clan were to have their hands and feet amputated before being allowed to bleed to death, while the women and children would be burned alive after being forced to witness the men's deaths. These sentences, extreme even by medieval standards, reflected both royal fury and a desire to ensure that no member of the clan could ever threaten Scotland again. The executions took place in Edinburgh before crowds that had travelled from across Scotland to witness the end of the nation's most notorious criminals. The spectacle served both as entertainment and as a warning. This was the fate that awaited those who placed themselves outside the bounds of human society. The clan members faced their deaths with the same inhuman calm they had displayed when captured, showing neither fear nor remorse until the very end. Contemporary chronicles report that even the hardened executioners, men accustomed to the violent theatre of medieval justice, were disturbed by the clan's responses to their impending deaths. The women showed no maternal instincts to protect their children. The men displayed no defiance or courage, and the children exhibited curiosity rather than terror. Their reactions suggested minds so thoroughly corrupted by their upbringing that normal human emotions had been completely suppressed. The public's reaction to the clan's execution revealed the deep psychological impact their crimes had inflicted on Scottish society. Witnesses reported feeling not satisfaction at justice served, but a disturbing sense that something fundamentally wrong with the world had been temporarily corrected. The clan's very existence had challenged basic assumptions about human nature, forcing people to confront the possibility that civilization itself might be more fragile than they had believed. Religious authorities seized upon the clan's story as evidence of humanity's capacity for evil when separated from divine guidance. Sermons preached throughout Scotland used the Bean family as examples of what happened when people rejected God's law in favor of their own desires. The cave itself was declared cursed ground, and several attempts were made to collapse the entrance and seal the site permanently. The economic impact of the clan's 25-year reign of terror extended far beyond the immediate costs of their crimes. Trade routes that had been abandoned due to fear required years to regain their former traffic levels. Merchant families that had lost entire caravans never recovered financially, and some communities depopulated by the clan's raids remained ghost towns for generations. The psychological scars proved even more persistent than the economic damage. Scholars attempting to understand how such a family could exist for so long without detection point to several factors unique to medieval Scotland. The rugged coastal geography provided perfect hiding places. The sparse population meant disappearances might go unnoticed for extended periods, and the feudal political system created gaps in authority that allowed criminals to operate with relative impunity. The clan story also illuminated the importance of social institutions in maintaining human civilization. Children raised in complete isolation from normal society developed into creatures that retained human intelligence while losing human empathy. Their transformation suggested that morality and conscience, far from being innate human characteristics, required careful nurturing through social interaction and cultural transmission. Modern psychologists studying the Bean clan's documented behaviors note striking similarities to cases of extreme child abuse and isolation. The clan's children displayed classic symptoms of reactive attachment disorder, characterized by inability to form normal emotional bonds, lack of empathy for others' suffering, and failure to develop age-appropriate social skills. However, the scale and duration of their isolation created pathologies far beyond anything documented in contemporary cases. The legend of Sawney Bean has inspired countless stories, books, and films over the centuries, but historians caution against treating fictional elaborations as historical fact. While the core elements of the story, a cannibal family operating from coastal caves, appear in multiple historical sources, many details have been embellished or invented by later storytellers seeking to maximize the tale's horrific impact. Archaeological investigations of the supposed Bean Cave have yielded mixed results. While human bones have been discovered in coastal caves along the Galloway coast, dating these remains and connecting them definitively to the Bean clan has proved challenging. Some scholars argue that the story represents a composite of multiple criminal families operating in the region, while others maintain that the basic outline of events is historically accurate. The Bean clan's legacy extends beyond mere historical curiosity to raise fundamental questions about the nature of humanity itself. Their story forces consideration of how quickly civilized behavior can disappear when social constraints are removed, and how thoroughly human nature can be corrupted by isolation and desperation. These questions remain relevant in an age when social isolation and family dysfunction continue to produce individuals who seem to exist outside normal moral boundaries. The tale also serves as a warning about the importance of community vigilance and social responsibility. The clan's crimes succeeded partly because neighbors failed to investigate disappearances thoroughly, authorities dismissed reports too readily, and society as a whole preferred to believe comfortable lies rather than confront uncomfortable truths. Their 25-year reign of terror might have been prevented by earlier intervention. Contemporary Scotland has largely moved beyond the superstitious fears that once surrounded the Bean story, but the psychological impact of their crimes continues to resonate. Tourism to the supposed cave sites remains popular, though visitors often report feeling unsettled by the locations even when they approach the sites as historical curiosities rather than scenes of authentic horror. The story's enduring power lies not in its supernatural elements. There were no ghosts or demons involved, but in its demonstration of humanity's capacity for evil when freed from social constraints. The Bean clan represents a dark mirror of civilized society, showing what humans become when they reject every value that distinguishes civilization from barbarism. Legal scholars continue to debate King James I's decision to execute the clan without trial, with some arguing that extreme circumstances justified extreme measures, while others contend that denying legal protections to any human beings, regardless of their crimes, set dangerous precedents for future injustices. The debate reflects ongoing tensions between individual rights and collective security that remain relevant in modern legal systems. The clan's children, in particular, raise troubling questions about moral culpability and the possibility of rehabilitation. Born into their horrific circumstances with no exposure to normal society, they had no opportunity to learn conventional morality or develop normal human empathy. Whether they deserved death for crimes, they were raised to commit touches on fundamental questions about free will, determinism, and the relationship between nature and nurture in human development. Modern criminologists studying the Bean case note that it shares characteristics with more recent examples of extreme family dysfunction and isolated criminal organizations. While cannibalism remains extremely rare, families that raise children in complete isolation from normal society continue to produce individuals whose psychological development is severely compromised. The Bean clan represents an extreme example of patterns that persist in different forms today. The story's transformation from historical account to cultural legend illustrates how societies process traumatic events through storytelling. Each retelling of the Bean saga has emphasized different elements: horror, justice, divine retribution, or social decay, depending on the concerns of particular eras. The tale serves as a vehicle for exploring whatever anxieties about human nature and social order happen to be current at any given time. Perhaps most disturbing of all, the Bean clan's story suggests that the darkness they represented doesn't simply disappear when particular criminals are executed. The same social conditions that allowed their crimes to flourish — isolation, poverty, breakdown of social institutions, and failure of community vigilance — continue to exist in various forms. The potential for similar horrors remains as long as human beings continue to be shaped by their circumstances and social environments. The Bean legacy forces acknowledgement that civilization's veneer may be thinner than most people prefer to believe. Their quarter-century of unopposed predation demonstrates how quickly normal social order can break down when evil is allowed to flourish unchecked. The lesson extends beyond their particular crimes to encompass any situation where society fails to protect its most vulnerable members from those who would exploit their weakness. The cave where they lived, whether or not it was the exact site later identified by investigators, remains a powerful symbol of hidden evil thriving in the shadows of normal life. Every society contains such caves, physical and metaphorical spaces where cruelty grows in darkness, protected by secrecy and enabled by indifference. The Bean Clan's story serves as an eternal warning that vigilance against such darkness must never relax. In the end, the tale of Sawney Bean and his cannibal clan transcends mere historical curiosity to become a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest fears about itself. Their crimes force confrontation with the possibility that civilization, morality, and human decency are not guaranteed features of human existence, but fragile achievements that require constant protection and renewal. The darkness that created the Bean Clan may indeed never truly die. It waits in every breakdown of social order, every failure of human compassion, and every moment when communities choose to look away rather than confront the evil growing in their midst.